The millionaire pretended to fall asleep to test the waitress's honesty and saw his missing daughter's ring. Night fell heavy over the small roadside diner on the outskirts of Austin, Texas. The neon open sign buzzed and flickered, casting an intermittent blue glow across the nearly empty parking lot. Inside, the scent of burnt coffee mingled with the greasy aroma of the day's special, meatloaf that had seen better hours. In the corner booth, Michael Harrington sat motionless, his head resting on his folded arms. At 49, his once jet-black hair had surrendered to streaks of silver, evidence of 15 years of grief and disillusionment to any casual observer. He appeared to be sleeping. He wasn't. Beneath his seemingly unconscious form, $50,000 in crisp $100 bills lay spread across the table, a silent trap for measuring the human soul. "You're wasting your time again, aren't you?" Michael, he thought to himself. 15 years of these tests had yielded the same disappointing result. People took the money. Always. He'd lost count of how many wallets, cash-filled envelopes, and visible stacks of bills had disappeared when he pretended to be asleep. Drunk or distracted, each theft had been another nail in the coffin of his faith in humanity. 15 years ago, his 10-year-old daughter Sophie had vanished without a trace while playing in their front yard. The police found nothing. No witnesses, no evidence. Nothing. His wife, Catherine, died 18 months later. The doctors called it heart failure, but Michael knew better. She'd died of a broken heart. Last test, he promised himself for what must have been the 100th time. Then I'm done with this. At the other end of the diner, Isabel Carter wiped down the counter with a rag that had seen as many hours as she had that day. Her honey-colored eyes, though tired, still held a warmth that her circumstances hadn't managed to extinguish. At 25, she already had the worn hands of someone much older, cracked from cheap soap and hot water. "I'm heading out, called Donnie, the short-order cook, untying his stained apron. "You good to lock up?" Isabel nodded, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. "Yeah, go on home to Tracy and the kids. Just got that one customer left." After Donnie left, Isabel checked her phone, a text from the hospital. Payment reminder for Mrs. Eleanor Carter. Her grandmother's heart surgery wasn't going to pay for itself, and the payment plan she'd negotiated was already 2 months behind. She sighed, mentally calculating her tips for the night. Maybe $40. Not enough. Never enough. She glanced toward her last customer, still seemingly asleep in the booth. She'd need to wake him soon. The diner closed in 15 minutes as she approached the booth. Her steps faltered. Spread across the table were more bills than she'd ever seen in one place. $50,000 at least. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she stood frozen, staring at the money. With that kind of cash, she could pay for Grandma's surgery, clear her student loan, fix the leak in the roof, buy a car that didn't break down every other week. The man hadn't moved. Was he drunk? Passed out? No one would know if she took some of it. Just a few bills. He clearly had money to spare. Isabel's hand trembled as she reached forward, her fingertips almost brushing against the crisp edges of the bills. Then she stopped. A memory surfaced. Her grandmother's voice. "What's not yours ain't yours, Izzy B. Don't matter how bad you need it." Isabel pulled her hand back as if the money had burned her. Instead, she covered the bills with a napkin, and then draped her own worn sweater over the pile to hide it from view. Gently, she touched the man's shoulder. Sir, I'm sorry to wake you, but it's not safe to leave this much money out. Please put it away." Michael Harrington opened his eyes, not bothering to feign grogginess. He'd been awake the entire time, watching her through barely parted lids. He'd seen her hesitation, the inner battle, and ultimately, her choice. "Why didn't you take it?" he asked directly, his voice unexpectedly gentle. Isabel stepped back, startled by the question. "Because it's not mine, sir, and what's not mine isn't mine to take, no matter how badly I might need it." Something flickered in Michael's eyes, something that hadn't been there for 15 years. Hope. But as he studied the waitress's face, his gaze fell to her hand, where a small silver ring adorned her finger. His world stopped spinning. The ring was delicate, crafted in the shape of small intertwined vines, but what froze Michael's blood was the tiny inscription visible on its band. "Shh! Sophie Harrington. Your ring," he managed, his voice barely a whisper. Where did you get it? Isabel glanced down, touching the silver band instinctively. This, I've had it since I was a kid. Found it at the orphanage where I grew up. It's the only thing of value I have. Orphanage. Michael stood so quickly that Isabel took a step back. Which one? Where? Hope Haven Home in Denver, she replied, confusion etching across her features. I arrived there when I was 10. I don't remember much from before that. 10 years old, Denver, the small silver ring he'd had custom made for his daughter's 10th birthday, with her initials delicately engraved inside, a ring that could not exist anywhere else in the world. Tears spilled down Michael's face as the pieces aligned with devastating clarity. The age, the timing, the ring, the lack of memories. Isabel, he said, his voice breaking on her name. I think you might be my daughter. I think you might be my Sophie. Isabel's face drained of color as she stared at the stranger whose test of honesty had just turned her world upside down. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the sound suddenly deafening in the silence between them. Outside, the Texas night grew darker, but inside the small roadside diner, a light that had been extinguished for 15 years flickered back to life. Tentative, fragile, but unmistakably present. Isabel stood frozen, her mind struggling to process the stranger's words. The diner suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. Your daughter, she finally managed, her voice barely a whisper. I don't understand. Michael reached into his wallet with trembling hands and pulled out a worn photograph. This is Sophie, my daughter, on her 10th birthday. Isabel accepted the photo with hesitant fingers. A smiling girl with honey-colored eyes stared back at her, a silver ring glinting on her small finger as she blew out birthday candles. The girl's features were hauntingly familiar. The same wide-set eyes, the same slight dimple in her left cheek. This could be anyone, Isabel said, but her voice lacked conviction. It could be a coincidence. May I? Michael gestured to her hand. Reluctantly, Isabel extended her fingers. Michael gently slid the ring off and held it to the light, revealing the inscription inside. S.H. 10 wires. I had this custom made for Sophie's 10th birthday, he explained, his voice thick. There isn't another ring like it anywhere. It was on her finger the day she disappeared from our front yard in Houston. Houston. Something flickered in Isabel's memory. A sprawling green lawn. A red bicycle. She shook her head, dismissing the image. I grew up in Denver. After, Michael said gently. Tell me what you remember before Denver. Isabel sank into the booth, her legs suddenly unsteady. Nothing clear, just fragments. Doctors said I had trauma-induced amnesia when I arrived at Hope Haven. They found me wandering near a bus station, confused and unable to remember my name or where I came from. Michael carefully returned the ring to her finger. What's the first solid memory you have? Isabel closed her eyes. Waking up in a white room, a social worker telling me my name was Isabel Carter, a name they'd given me because I couldn't remember my own. Her voice grew softer. I was so scared. I kept asking for someone, but I couldn't remember who. The diner's clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed. Sophie disappeared 15 years ago, Michael finally said. She was 10 years old. She had a small scar on her left knee from falling off her bike. Isabel's hand instinctively moved to her left knee, where a thin white scar curved just below the kneecap. She'd never known how she got it. This is insane, she whispered. The overnight manager arrived, keys jingling. You can head out. I'll take it from here. Michael gathered the money from the table, stuffing it into his jacket pocket. Is there somewhere we can talk? 20 minutes later, they sat in a 24-hour diner across town. Michael's untouched coffee cooled as he showed Isabel more photos on his phone. Sophie at 7, riding her first two-wheeler. Sophie at 9, playing a white piano. Sophie with her mother, Catherine, both laughing at the camera. My wife, Sophie's mother, died a year and a half after the disappearance, Michael explained. The police found nothing, no witnesses, no evidence. It was like Sophie had vanished into thin air. Isabel stared at the photos, a peculiar ache building in her chest. The white piano in one picture triggered something. Her fingers twitched involuntarily, as if remembering the feel of ivory keys. You said I disappeared from the yard, she said, noticing her unconscious shift to first person. Was anyone with me? You were playing alone. I was inside on a work call. Your mother was at the grocery store. Michael's voice cracked with the guilt he'd carried for 15 years. 7 minutes. I was on the phone for 7 minutes. And when I looked out the window, you were gone. Isabel studied his face, the deep creases around his eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair. Grief had aged him prematurely. If I am who you think I am, she began carefully, why wouldn't my kidnapper just... She couldn't finish the sentence. That's what I've been asking myself for 15 years, Michael replied. Why take you just to abandon you at an orphanage in another state? Isabel rubbed her temple, where a headache was forming. This is a lot to process. I know. Michael reached into his pocket and produced a business card. I'm staying at the Four Seasons, room 718. I'll be here for 3 more days. Isabel read the card. Michael Harrington, CEO, Harrington Technologies. I don't expect you to believe me based on a ring and some photographs. Michael continued, his voice gentle. But there's a way to know for certain. He hesitated. A DNA test. Isabel looked up sharply. DNA. It would take a few days for results, but it would tell us without doubt if you're Sophie. Isabel stared at the ring on her finger, the ring she'd treasured for as long as she could remember, never knowing why it felt so precious. Part of her wanted to flee, to return to her small apartment and pretend this bizarre encounter had never happened. But a deeper part, the part that had always felt disconnected, adrift, pushed her forward. Okay, she said finally, but no promises. And I need to think about this. Really think. Michael nodded, relief washing over his features. That's fair. More than fair. The next 48 hours passed in a blur for both of them. Michael contacted the top DNA testing lab in Texas. Arranging for expedited processing, Isabel called in sick to work, spending hours scrolling through the Harrington Technologies website, reading about the man who claimed to be her father. The company was worth billions, with offices in 14 countries. If this was a scam, it was an elaborate one. On the morning of the test, Isabel arrived at the private lab in downtown Austin. Michael was already there, pacing nervously in the waiting room. They barely spoke as technicians collected their samples. The results would be ready in 3 days, expedited at considerable expense. What will you do? Isabel asked as they stood awkwardly in the parking lot afterward. If it's negative, Michael's gaze was steady. Continue searching. But Isabel, I know in my heart it won't be negative. While they waited, Michael flew to Denver, visiting Hope Haven Home with a private investigator. The orphanage's records showed a 10-year-old girl had indeed been brought in 15 years ago, found disoriented near the bus station. No identification except for clothes and a silver ring they'd let her keep. By the time Michael returned to Austin, the DNA results were ready. Isabel met him at the lab, her hands trembling as the technician handed them a sealed envelope. You open it, she told Michael. Unable to steady her voice, Michael broke the seal and unfolded the paper. His eyes filled with tears as he looked up at Isabel. 97% match, he whispered. You are my daughter. You're my Sophie. Isabel, now Sophie, felt the room spin around her. 15 years of wondering who she was, where she came from, why she'd been abandoned, all answered in a single piece of paper. I have a father, she thought, the realization both terrifying and wonderful. I have my daughter back, Michael thought, reaching for her hand with trembling fingers. Neither knew that in Los Angeles, a woman named Vanessa Harrington was about to receive a phone call that would turn her carefully constructed world upside down. It's ready whenever you are, Michael said, his hand resting on the door of the private jet. No pressure. We can fly commercial if you'd prefer. Isabel. No, Sophie. She corrected herself mentally, gazed up at the gleaming white aircraft with Harrington emblazoned on its side. 3 days had passed since the DNA results confirmed what Michael's heart had already known. Now he wanted to take her home to Los Angeles, to the life she should have had. A private jet, she murmured, clutching her single suitcase. Everything she owned fit inside it with room to spare. I've never even flown first class, Michael smiled, the crinkles around his eyes deepening. Well, technically, this is better than first class. The interior of the jet stunned her into silence, buttery leather seats, polished wood tables, a fully stocked bar. As they took off, Sophie pressed her face to the window like a child, watching Austin shrink beneath them, the city where she'd struggled for years, working double shifts and eating ramen to make rent, now just a cluster of buildings fading into the landscape. "I spoke with my assistant," Michael said once they were airborne. "Your room is ready." "My room?" Sophie turned from the window. "You kept my room for 15 years. Michael's expression softened. "I never gave up hope, Sophie. Never." Sophie felt a twinge at the name, still foreign to her ears. "It might take me some time to get used to being called Sophie again." "We've got time," Michael assured her. "All the time in the world." The flight attendant served them lunch, lobster salad and champagne. Sophie picked at the unfamiliar food, her mind racing with questions. "Tell me about my mother," she said suddenly. Pain flickered across Michael's face. "Catherine was extraordinary, brilliant mind. She was a concert pianist before you were born. Is that why I had a white piano?" The question slipped out before Sophie realized the memory had surfaced. Michael stared at her, hope blooming in his eyes. "Yes, Catherine taught you to play. You remember the piano?" Sophie closed her eyes, trying to grasp the fleeting image. Just flashes, white keys, small hands, my hands, pressing them down. She shook her head. "It's gone now. The doctors said memories might return gradually," Michael said. "Catherine would spend hours with you at that piano. You were quite good for your age. What happened to her after I disappeared?" Michael's hand tightened around his champagne flute. "She never recovered. Spent every waking moment searching for you, following any lead, no matter how improbable. She'd drive to sightings of girls who looked like you in other states, only to come home broken-hearted each time." He took a deep breath. 18 months after you vanished, her heart simply gave out. The doctors called it heart failure, but she died of grief." Sophie finished softly. Michael nodded, unable to speak. "I'm sorry," Sophie whispered. "I wish I could remember her." "You will," Michael said with quiet certainty. "Bits and pieces are already coming back." The Los Angeles coastline came into view hours later, the Pacific Ocean stretching endlessly beneath them. Sophie's stomach tightened as the jet began its descent. She was about to step into a world she didn't remember, a life that had been stolen from her. "Who else lives at your hour house?" she asked, realizing she knew almost nothing about her father's current life. "Just my sister, your Aunt Vanessa," Michael replied, gathering his things as they prepared to land. "She moved in after Catherine died to help manage the house. She travels a lot for her own business ventures, though." "Does she know about me?" "I called her yesterday. She was overwhelmed. In shock, really." Michael's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "She's eager to meet you." A sleek black SUV met them on the tarmac. As they drove through Los Angeles, Sophie pressed her face to the window, taking in palm trees and sprawling mansions. The SUV turned into a gated community in Bel Air, then up a long, winding driveway lined with perfectly manicured hedges. Sophie gasped as the Harrington estate came into view, a massive Spanish colonial mansion with terracotta roofing and creamy stucco walls. Fountains dotted the circular drive, where the car came to a stop. "This is where I grew up," she whispered. "For the first 10 years of your life," Michael confirmed, helping her from the car. A staff of 5 greeted them at the door. A housekeeper, a chef, a groundskeeper, and 2 assistants. Sophie nodded numbly as Michael introduced them, their names washing over her like water. This world of wealth and privilege felt more alien than familiar. "I thought we'd start with your room," Michael said gently, sensing her overwhelm. "Just the 2 of us." They climbed a sweeping staircase to the 2nd floor. At the end of the east wing, Michael paused before a white door with a hand-painted sign, "Sophie's Kingdom." The childish lettering made Sophie's heart constrict. "Ready?" Michael asked. Sophie nodded, not trusting her voice. The room was frozen in time, a 10-year-old girl's sanctuary preserved like a museum exhibit. Pale pink walls, a canopied bed with a mountain of stuffed animals, bookshelves filled with children's classics. A collection of porcelain dolls stared at her from a display case. In the corner stood a child-sized white piano. "Everything's exactly as you left it," Michael said. Hanging back in the doorway, Catherine wouldn't let anyone change a thing, and after she passed, I couldn't either. Sophie moved through the room in a daze, touching objects that should have felt familiar but didn't. She picked up a framed photo from the nightstand, herself at 8 or 9, sandwiched between Michael and a beautiful woman with the same honey-colored eyes. Catherine, her mother. "I look like her," Sophie murmured. "You do? Same eyes, same spirit." Sophie approached the piano, drawn to it instinctively. Her fingers hovered over the keys, then pressed down. A clear, perfect note rang out, followed by another, then another. To her astonishment, her fingers moved of their own accord, playing the opening bars of a simple melody. "Für Elise," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. "Catherine taught you that piece when you were 9. "I remember," Sophie whispered, the music awakening something deep within her. "I remember practicing this, hours and hours." She continued to play, muscle memory guiding her fingers through the familiar patterns. Tears streamed down her face as the music connected her to a past she'd thought was lost forever. "Daddy," the word emerged unbidden, feeling both strange and right on her tongue. Michael crossed the room and enveloped her in his arms. For a long moment, they clung to each other, 15 years of separation dissolving in a flood of tears. A throat cleared in the doorway. Sophie looked up to see a woman in her mid-40s watching them, her face pale as marble, tall, slim, and immaculately dressed in designer clothes. She had Michael's dark hair and sharp features, but her eyes were cold gray rather than warm brown. "Vanessa," Michael said, straightening. "Come meet Sophie, she's home." Vanessa Harrington didn't move. She stared at Sophie with an expression that flashed from shock to something darker before settling into a tight smile. "Welcome home, Sophie," she said, her voice perfectly modulated despite the tremor in her hands. "What a miracle, after all these years." Sophie rose from the piano bench, suddenly uneasy under her aunt's penetrating gaze. Something about the woman triggered a flicker of unease, a warning she couldn't articulate. "Thank you," Sophie replied cautiously. "It's overwhelming." "I'm sure it is," Vanessa said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Quite the reversal of fortune, isn't it? From waitress to heiress overnight." Michael shot his sister a warning look. "Vanessa, just an observation, brother dear." Vanessa's gaze remained fixed on Sophie, calculating. "We have so much catching up to do. Niece." The way she said the word niece made Sophie's skin crawl. Dinner that evening was an exercise in measured politeness. In the grand dining room, where a chandelier cast prismatic light over a mahogany table set for 3, Sophie picked at food too fancy to name, while Vanessa observed her like a scientist monitoring an experiment. "So, Isabel." "Sorry, Sophie," Vanessa said, delicately cutting into her filet mignon. "Tell me about this orphanage of yours. Hope Haven, was it? Sounds charming." "Vanessa," Michael warned. "What? I'm simply getting to know my long-lost niece." Vanessa's smile was sharp as a razor. "Family history and all that." Sophie set down her fork. "It was an orphanage, not a summer camp. But they were kind enough. I was luckier than most. And after, Michael mentioned you were a waitress." The way Vanessa said waitress made it sound like prostitute. Sophie straightened her shoulders. I worked at Lenny's Diner for 6 years to put myself through community college." "How resourceful," Vanessa replied. "And what did you study at this community college?" "Business administration and accounting," Sophie said. "I graduated with honors." Michael beamed. "That's my girl. Business sense is in your blood." Vanessa's knuckles whitened around her wine glass. "Yes, the Harrington touch. Though I wonder if other aptitudes might be more genetic." "What's that supposed to mean?" Michael asked. Vanessa waved a dismissive hand. Nothing. More wine. Anyone." After dinner, Vanessa excused herself with a headache. As soon as she was out of earshot, Sophie turned to Michael. "She doesn't like me." Michael sighed. "Vanessa's just protective. She's been my right hand since Catherine died. Change is difficult for her." "It's more than that," Sophie insisted. "She looks at me like I'm a threat." "Give her time," Michael said, squeezing her hand. "This is a shock for everyone." But Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that Vanessa's animosity went deeper than mere adjustment difficulties. Later that night, Unable to sleep in her childhood bed that felt both familiar and strange, Sophie crept downstairs for a glass of water. The mansion was eerily quiet, moonlight filtering through the enormous windows. As she passed the library, she heard Vanessa's voice, tense and urgent. "You promised me it was handled 15 years ago, you promised me." A pause. "Well, she's here now, isn't she? In the flesh, with her little silver ring and her DNA test." Sophie froze, her heart hammering. "I don't care what it costs," Vanessa continued. "You failed once, don't fail me again." Sophie backed away from the door, accidentally bumping a decorative table. A small vase wobbled. Silence from within the library. "I'll call you back," Vanessa said sharply. Sophie scurried around the corner just as the library door opened. She pressed herself against the wall, scarcely breathing as Vanessa's footsteps passed by and up the stairs. Once certain she was alone, Sophie slumped against the wall. What had she just heard? Who was Vanessa talking to? And what exactly had been handled 15 years ago? The implications made her dizzy with fear. Could Vanessa have had something to do with her disappearance? The next morning, Michael had to leave for an emergency board meeting. "Crisis with our Asian markets," he explained apologetically over breakfast. "I should be back by dinner." Sophie nodded, trying to hide her anxiety at being left alone with Vanessa. "I'll be fine. Thought I'd explore the house a bit more." "Make yourself at home," Michael said, kissing her forehead. "It is your home, after all." After he left, Sophie wandered through the mansion, reacquainting herself with the space that should have been familiar. Each room was immaculate, designed with obvious wealth but tasteful restraint. Family photographs lined many walls. Sophie at various ages, Catherine's beautiful face, younger versions of Michael. Vanessa appeared infrequently, often standing slightly apart from the others. In the main hall, Sophie paused before a large portrait of Catherine at the white piano, her expression serene as her fingers hovered above the keys. Something about her mother's face triggered a faint memory, gentle hands guiding hers on the piano, the scent of jasmine perfume, a soft voice singing along as she practiced. She was quite talented, Vanessa said, appearing so suddenly that Sophie jumped. Could have been world-renowned if she hadn't given it all up to be a mother. "She looks happy in this picture," Sophie observed. Catherine was always performing. Vanessa's tone was light, but her eyes were cold, even when she wasn't on stage. Sophie turned to face her aunt. "Did you two not get along?" Vanessa's smile was tight. Catherine was perfect in everyone's eyes, especially Michael's, the beautiful pianist who gave him his precious daughter. The rest of us mere mortals couldn't compete. "It wasn't a competition," Sophie said quietly. Vanessa's laugh was brittle. "Oh, sweet girl. Everything in this family is a competition." She glanced at her watch. "I have a conference call. Do make yourself comfortable. Mi casa es tu casa, as they say," after Vanessa disappeared into her office. Sophie continued her exploration, eventually finding herself in what appeared to be a home office. Framed business certificates hung on the walls alongside photographs of Michael shaking hands with famous politicians and business leaders. On the mahogany desk sat a sleek computer and neatly organized files. Sophie hesitated at the threshold. This was Michael's private space, but the urge to learn more about her father, and perhaps find clues about Vanessa's mysterious phone call, was overwhelming. She slipped inside and began browsing the bookshelves. Business texts, biographies of successful entrepreneurs, and several books on child abduction and missing persons cases. Her heart constricted at this evidence of Michael's relentless search for her. A silver-framed photo on the desk caught her eye. Michael, Catherine, and herself as a child, posing on a beach. Their smiles were radiant, arms wrapped around each other, a perfect family. As Sophie set the frame down, she noticed a folder marked "Sophie Private," partially visible beneath a desk calendar. Her hands trembled as she pulled it out. Inside were newspaper clippings about her disappearance, police reports, and correspondence with private investigators over the years. Michael had never stopped looking, never given up hope. The most recent report was dated just 2 months ago. Beneath the folder was a leather journal. Sophie hesitated, then opened it to a random page. "Sophie would be 25 today," Michael had written. "I bought a cupcake with a candle, same as every year. Catherine would have laughed at the tradition, but it helps me feel connected. Somewhere," She's out there. I have to believe that. Tears welled in Sophie's eyes. The depth of her father's love and grief was overwhelming. The last section of the folder contained financial statements, wire transfers to investigators, rewards offered for information. The sums were staggering, and then, at the bottom, something odd. A copy of Michael's will, dated 3 years ago. Should I die before my daughter Sophie is found, my estate shall be divided as follows: 70% to continue the search for Sophie Harrington, and to be held in trust should she return. 25% to the Harrington Foundation for Missing Children, and 5% to my sister, Vanessa Harrington. Sophie sat back, stunned. If she had never been found, Vanessa would have inherited only a tiny fraction of the Harrington fortune. But with Sophie declared legally dead after 7 years missing, the distribution might have eventually changed. Had her aunt seen her as a financial impediment? The sound of footsteps in the hall jolted Sophie back to reality. She quickly replaced the folder and journal exactly as she'd found them, then slipped out of the office and into the adjacent sitting room. Vanessa appeared in the doorway, her gaze sharp. "Finding everything you need. Just exploring," Sophie said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "This house is like a maze. Indeed, so easy to get lost." Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Be careful where you wander." Sophie, not all rooms are meant to be, reopened. The threat beneath her aunt's words was unmistakable. Over the next few days, Sophie felt Vanessa's campaign against her building like a slow-moving storm. It began subtly. Whispered conversations that stopped when she entered rooms, curious glances from staff members, phone calls that Vanessa took in private. Sophie found Maria, the housekeeper who had worked for the Harringtons for 20 years, studying her with undisguised suspicion while making her bed. "Is something wrong?" "Maria," Sophie asked, leaning against the doorframe. Maria smoothed the silk duvet with practiced hands. "Miss Vanessa says we should be careful with the family jewelry around new people in the house." "New people?" Sophie repeated. "You mean me?" Maria's eyes darted away. "I didn't say that, Miss Sophie. But Vanessa did, didn't she?" Maria didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation enough. Later that afternoon, Sophie overheard Vanessa on the phone with someone named Richard from the family's legal team. "Surely there must be some way to verify the authenticity of these DNA results," Vanessa was saying. "Labs make mistakes all the time, or samples can be compromised." Sophie's blood ran cold. Vanessa was actively trying to discredit her. But why? The conversation she'd overheard the previous night echoed in her mind. "You promised me it was handled." That evening, Michael hosted a small dinner party, just 6 people including themselves, to introduce Sophie to his closest friends. Vanessa arrived fashionably late, kissing the air beside each guest's cheek before taking her seat. "Sophie, darling," she called across the table, her voice sweet with poison. "Tell everyone the charming story of how you and Michael found each other. It's so serendipitous." All eyes turned to Sophie, who straightened in her chair. "My father was testing the honesty of strangers. He left money visible in a diner where I worked and pretended to be asleep." "Testing the honesty of a waitress," Vanessa interjected with a tinkling laugh. "How novel." "I didn't take the money," Sophie continued firmly. "I covered it with my sweater and woke him up." "So honorable," Vanessa said. "And then he just happened to notice your little ring. The ring that belonged to his daughter," Sophie corrected, meeting her aunt's gaze steadily. "The ring that allegedly belonged to his daughter," Vanessa amended, sipping her wine. "Such a remarkable coincidence." "DNA doesn't lie, Vanessa," Michael cut in, his tone sharp. "Of course not, brother dear." Vanessa smiled tightly. "And we're all just thrilled that after 15 years of searching, you found Sophie working as a waitress in a diner where you just happened to stop." "Miraculous, really." The guests shifted uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should move on to a less contentious topic," suggested James Whitfield, Michael's oldest friend and business partner. "Sophie, Michael tells me you studied business administration. Any interest in joining Harrington Technologies?" Sophie welcomed the change of subject. "I'd like to learn the business first, see where I might fit in." "Smart girl," James approved. "Start from the ground up." "Yes, our Sophie certainly knows about starting from the ground up," Vanessa commented. "From diner floors to marble ones, quite the Cinderella story." "That's enough, Vanessa," Michael snapped. The table fell silent. Vanessa's smile never faltered, but her eyes glittered with malice. "Just making conversation, brother." She turned to the woman beside her. "Patricia, how is that charity of yours doing? The one for disadvantaged children, isn't it?" Sophie excused herself shortly after dessert, retreating to her room with a pounding headache. She sat on the edge of her childhood bed, surrounded by stuffed animals that should have comforted her, but instead felt like strangers watching her every move. A soft knock at the door startled her. "Sophie," it was Michael. "May I come in?" She opened the door to find her father looking troubled. "I'm sorry about Vanessa's behavior," he said, entering the room. "She was completely out of line. She's been poisoning people against me," Sophie said. "The staff, your friends. She wants them to think I'm an imposter." Michael sighed heavily, sinking onto the window seat. "Vanessa can be difficult. She's been the woman of the house for so long. I think she feels threatened." "It's more than that," Sophie insisted, deciding to voice her growing suspicion. "Dad, I think she might have had something to do with my disappearance." Michael's head snapped up. "What are you talking about?" Sophie told him about the conversation she'd overheard. Vanessa's angry words to whoever was on the other end of the phone. She said, "You promised me it was handled. What if she was talking about me? What if she arranged my kidnapping 15 years ago?" "That's a serious accusation, Sophie," Michael said, but she could see doubt flickering in his eyes. "Vanessa is my sister, and I'm your daughter. Why would I make this up?" Michael ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair. "I'm not saying you are, it's just, Vanessa has been my rock since Catherine died. She helped me keep the business together while I was lost in grief. Or maybe she saw an opportunity," Sophie suggested quietly. Michael stood up, visibly struggling with the possibility. "I need to think about this. In the meantime, try to keep your distance from Vanessa. Shouldn't be hard since she clearly can't stand the sight of me," Sophie muttered after Michael left. Sophie couldn't sleep. She paced her room, replaying Vanessa's words at dinner, the overheard phone call, the suspicious glances. The pieces were beginning to form a disturbing picture. Around midnight, Sophie heard the distinctive sound of Vanessa's heels clicking down the hallway, followed by the soft closing of the front door. Curious, she peered out her window in time to see her aunt getting into her Mercedes, then driving away with headlights off until she reached the main gate. Where was Vanessa going at midnight? The next morning, Sophie woke to raised voices downstairs. She crept to the landing and listened. "Completely inappropriate behavior, Vanessa," Michael was saying. "Sophie is my daughter, confirmed by DNA. Your insinuations need to stop immediately. I'm only looking out for you." "Michael," Vanessa replied, her voice sickly sweet. "You've been searching for so long. You'd believe anything. This girl shows up with a convenient ring and a sob story. A DNA match, Vanessa, 99 and 97%. Those aren't numbers you can fake. Labs can be paid off. Tests can be manipulated. By a waitress from Austin," Michael scoffed. "Listen to yourself. She's after the money, Michael, can't you see that? She watched you leave that cash out, did her research on you, and is now playing the long con." Sophie had heard enough. She descended the stairs, making her presence known. Both Michael and Vanessa turned to look at her, Vanessa's face flushing with anger. "If I were after money," Sophie said calmly, "I would have taken the $50,000 you left on that diner table. That would have been a lot easier than fabricating a DNA match and moving across the country." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Clever girl, playing the honest waitress to hook a much bigger fish. That's not what happened, and you know it," Sophie replied. "The question is, what are you so afraid of, Aunt Vanessa? What happens to you now that I'm back?" A flash of panic crossed Vanessa's face before she composed herself. "Nothing happens to me. I'm simply concerned about my brother being taken advantage of." "I think it's more than that," Sophie pressed. "I think my return threatens something you've built over the last 15 years. Something that required my absence." Vanessa's face hardened. "Be careful with your accusations, little girl. You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Enough," Michael thundered. "Vanessa, you're my sister and I love you. But Sophie is my daughter. She is staying, and that's final." Vanessa's smile was brittle. "Of course, brother, it's your house." She grabbed her purse from the counter. "I have appointments today, don't wait up." After she left, The garage door rumbling closed behind her car. Michael turned to Sophie with troubled eyes. "I've never seen her like this," he admitted. "Something isn't right." Sophie took a deep breath. "Dad, I think we need to hire someone. A private investigator. Someone who can look into where I was for 15 years. And who put me there." Michael nodded slowly. "I know just the person ex-FBI, worked Sophie cases for years. I'll call him today." Neither of them noticed Maria in the doorway, phone in hand. Having heard every word, David Mercer looked more like an accountant than a former FBI agent. With his wire-rimmed glasses, neatly trimmed salt and pepper beard, and unassuming posture, he could blend into any crowd, a valuable trait in his profession. He sat across from Michael and Sophie in Michael's home office, a leather notebook open on his lap. "I handled 3 of Sophie's cold case reviews over the years," Mercer explained, his voice soft but precise. "The trail was always dead by the time it reached my desk. No ransom demands, no witnesses, no evidence. But now we have something new," Michael said, leaning forward in his chair. "Sophie's alive, and she spent 15 years in an orphanage in Denver after being found at a bus station." Mercer nodded, making a note. "Hope Haven Home? I'll start there. Check their records. Interview staff who were present 15 years ago." "There's more," Sophie interjected. "My Aunt Vanessa. She's been acting strangely since I returned. I overheard her on the phone saying someone had promised it was handled 15 years ago, and she's actively trying to discredit my identity." Mercer's pen paused mid-stroke. "You're suggesting your aunt might have been involved in your disappearance." "It's a theory," Michael said carefully. "One we need to either confirm or rule out. It would help to know motive," Mercer said. "What would Vanessa gain from your disappearance, Sophie?" Michael answered. Before Sophie could. "Financial control, potentially. After Catherine died, Vanessa stepped in to help me run both the household and aspects of the business. If Sophie had been declared legally dead after 7 years missing, the inheritance arrangements would have changed." "And how much are we talking about?" Mercer asked. "The Harrington estate is valued at approximately $2.7 billion, Michael said quietly. Mercer's eyebrows rose. "That's certainly motive, but arranging the disappearance of a child is extreme, even for financial gain. Vanessa has always been jealous," Michael admitted, "of Catherine, of my success, of the attention Sophie received, but I never imagined she could do something like this." "I'll need to be discreet," Mercer said, closing his notebook. "If your sister is involved and suspects we're investigating her, she might destroy evidence or warn whoever helped her." "We'll be careful," Michael promised. "How soon can you get to Denver?" "I'll fly out tonight. The orphanage records are priority 1. If someone dropped Sophie there, we need to know who." After Mercer left, Sophie wandered to the family room, where a photo album lay open on the coffee table. She flipped through pages of her childhood, birthdays, Christmases, beach vacations, searching for any hint of Vanessa's animosity in these frozen moments of time. In most photos, Vanessa stood slightly apart from the family unit, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. In one Christmas picture, Sophie spotted something she hadn't noticed before. While everyone else was opening presents, Vanessa was watching Michael with an expression that could only be described as hungry. "Finding anything interesting?" Sophie jumped. Michael stood in the doorway, his expression soft. "Just trying to remember," she said, closing the album. "It's still mostly blank spaces." Michael sat beside her on the sofa. "The doctors said memories might return gradually. Don't force it." "What was Vanessa like when I was a child?" Sophie asked. Michael considered the question. "Distant, I suppose. She visited for holidays. Sent expensive gifts, but never really connected with you. Catherine thought Vanessa resented her for taking me away. We were close as children. Vanessa and I. Were she and my mother friends?" Michael laughed without humor. "Hardly. Vanessa thought Catherine married me for money. She never understood that Catherine was already successful in her own right, that she gave up her career for our family. And after I disappeared?" Michael's face darkened. "Vanessa was surprisingly supportive. She moved in, took over household management, helped me keep the business afloat while I searched for you. Without her, I might have lost everything. Or she positioned herself exactly where she wanted to be," Sophie suggested quietly. Before Michael could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen. "It's James. Business emergency. I need to take this." As Michael stepped out, Sophie returned to the photo album. On the last page, she found a picture of herself at age 10, presumably taken shortly before her disappearance. She was sitting on a garden swing, laughing at the camera. The carefree joy in her expression made Sophie's heart ache. What had happened to that little girl, who had taken her from this life of privilege and safety? 3 days later, David Mercer called from Denver. "I've been reviewing Hope Haven's records," he reported, his voice crackling over the speakerphone in Michael's office. "Something's off. The intake documentation for Isabel Carter, Sophie, is incomplete. Sections are missing or improperly filed." "Deliberately?" Michael asked. "Could be negligence, but I'm leaning toward intentional. I've interviewed 3 staff members who were there when Sophie arrived. They remember her. Traumatized, no memories, found near the bus station by a local shopkeeper." "And the shopkeeper?" Sophie asked. "Died 4 years ago. Convenient." Mercer's tone was grim. "But I found something else. The night Sophie arrived, a sizable donation was made to Hope Haven. $50,000 in cash, anonymous." Michael and Sophie exchanged glances. "That's the same amount I left on the diner table," Michael said slowly. "Exactly," Mercer confirmed. "It's a pattern. The orphanage received another anonymous cash donation of the same amount on the anniversary of Sophie's arrival for the next 3 years. Hush money," Sophie whispered. "That's my theory. Someone paid the orphanage to take Sophie. No questions asked, then continued payments to ensure their cooperation." "Can you trace the donations?" Michael asked. "Working on it. One more thing. I checked flight records from Houston to Denver around the time of Sophie's disappearance. There was a private charter the day after she went missing. The passenger manifest listed a man named Carl Jenkins. That name doesn't ring any bells," Michael said. "It wouldn't. He's a small-time criminal with a record of burglary and fraud. But here's the interesting part. He worked briefly as a landscaper for an estate in Houston 15 years ago. The Harrington estate," Sophie guessed. "No," Mercer replied. "Vanessa Harrington's estate. Your aunt had a separate residence at the time." The implications hung heavy in the air. "I'm trying to locate Jenkins now," Mercer continued. "He's dropped off the grid, but his last known address was in Phoenix. I'm heading there tomorrow." After the call ended, Michael slumped in his chair. "If Vanessa really did this, we need proof," Sophie said firmly. "Concrete evidence before we confront her." "I've known her my entire life," Michael said, his voice hollow. "My own sister. People do terrible things for money and power," Sophie said gently. "Even family." That evening, Michael had to attend a charity gala, an obligation he couldn't cancel without raising questions. Sophie opted to stay home, claiming fatigue. "Are you sure you'll be all right alone?" Michael asked, adjusting his bow tie in the foyer mirror. "Vanessa will be at the gala too, but still." "I'll be fine," Sophie assured him. "I have some reading to catch up on." After Michael left, Sophie took advantage of the empty house to explore more thoroughly. She started with Vanessa's wing, a suite of rooms on the west side of the mansion that her aunt had claimed as her personal domain. The door to Vanessa's bedroom was locked, but her home office wasn't. Sophie slipped inside, heart pounding. The room was immaculate. Modern furniture, abstract art, everything in pristine order. A sleek laptop sat closed on the glass desk, undoubtedly password protected. Sophie began carefully searching drawers and cabinets, making sure to leave everything exactly as she found it, in the filing cabinet. She discovered financial records, property deeds, and investment portfolios, all evidence of Vanessa's considerable personal wealth. In the bottom drawer, hidden beneath hanging files, Sophie found a folder labeled simply SH. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were newspaper clippings about her own disappearance, private investigator reports similar to those in Michael's office, but with one crucial difference. These had been annotated in Vanessa's elegant handwriting, next to a paragraph about the case going cold. She had written, "Confirm Jay has relocated permanently. J. Jenkins." A sound from the hallway made Sophie freeze. Footsteps approached, too heavy for Maria or the other household staff. Quickly, she returned the folder to its hiding place, closed the drawer, and slipped behind the door just as it began to open. Sophie held her breath as the door swung inward, pressing herself against the wall. Through the narrow gap, she glimpsed Maria entering with a feather duster and cleaning supplies. The housekeeper sighed, set down her caddy, and began dusting the bookshelves. Sophie's mind raced. She couldn't leave without Maria seeing her, but being caught hiding in Vanessa's office would only confirm the suspicions her aunt had been planting. Maria. Sophie stepped out from behind the door. The housekeeper gasped, clutching her chest. "Miss Sophie, you scared me half to death." "I'm sorry," Sophie said, thinking quickly. "I was looking for a book Vanessa mentioned. Something about Harrington family history." Maria's expression turned guarded. "Miss Vanessa doesn't like people in her private office." "I thought she wouldn't mind if it was family," Sophie said, moving toward the door. "I'll ask her directly when she gets home. Please don't worry about it." Maria's eyes narrowed slightly. "Of course, Miss Sophie." Sophie retreated to her room, certain that Maria would report the incident to Vanessa. She'd have to be more careful, and faster. The folder she'd found confirmed her suspicions that Vanessa had been tracking the aftermath of her disappearance, possibly to ensure Sophie was never found. Her phone rang. David Mercer. "I found Jenkins," he said without preamble when she answered. "Living in a rundown apartment complex in Phoenix under the name Carl James. He's in bad shape. Cirrhosis. Emphysema. Barely functioning. Did you speak with him?" "Briefly. He was evasive at first, but when I mentioned the Harrington name, he practically had a panic attack. Said he didn't want any trouble, that he'd kept his end of the bargain." "What bargain?" Sophie's heart raced. "He wouldn't say," slammed the door in my face, "but I'm watching his place. If he runs, we'll know we're onto something." The next morning, Sophie woke to raised voices downstairs. She crept to the landing to listen. "In my private office," Vanessa was saying, her voice tight with anger. "She said she was looking for a book," Maria replied. "And you believed that?" She was snooping Maria, looking for something to strengthen her claim. "Miss Vanessa, the DNA test can be faked. Wake up, Maria. This girl appears out of nowhere with a convenient story, and suddenly she's the long-lost heiress." "It's the oldest con in the book." Sophie had heard enough. She descended the stairs, making her presence known. Vanessa and Maria fell silent, the housekeeper looking embarrassed. "Good morning," Sophie said pleasantly. "I hope you enjoyed the gala last night." "Aunt Vanessa." Vanessa's smile was glacial. "Immensely, though I was surprised you didn't join us, too busy exploring the house." "Just tired," Sophie replied, still adjusting to all the changes. "Indeed," Vanessa turned to Maria. "That will be all for now," after the housekeeper left. Vanessa stepped closer to Sophie, dropping all pretense of civility. "Stay out of my office, stay out of my things, or this little reunion will end very unpleasantly for you." "Is that a threat?" Sophie asked quietly. "Consider it friendly advice from your loving aunt." Vanessa's smile never reached her cold eyes. "Family or not, I protect what's mine." Before Sophie could respond, the doorbell rang. Moments later, Michael entered with David Mercer. "Vanessa," Michael said, his tone deliberately casual. "You remember David. He's helping Sophie recover some of her lost memories." Vanessa's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, the investigator. How thorough of you, Michael." "Ms. Harrington?" Mercer nodded politely. "I hope you don't mind me stopping by unannounced." "Why would I mind?" Vanessa's laugh was brittle. "Unless you're here to investigate me." Mercer's expression remained neutral. "Just following up on some leads regarding Sophie's time in Denver." Something flickered in Vanessa's eyes. Fear, calculation. "How interesting. Well, don't let me keep you from your work." She gathered her purse from the entryway table. "I have meetings all day." "Michael, don't wait up." After she left, Michael turned to Mercer. "Any news?" "Jenkins is on the move," Mercer replied. "He booked a one-way ticket to Mexico City leaving tonight. I need to intercept him before he disappears for good. Then we're going to Phoenix," Michael declared. Now, 4 hours later, their private jet touched down in Phoenix. A rental car was waiting, and Mercer drove them to a shabby apartment complex on the city's outskirts. The midday sun beat down mercilessly as they climbed 3 flights of external stairs to Unit 347. Mercer knocked. No answer. "He should be here," Mercer said. My associate's been watching the place all morning." He knocked again, harder. Finally, they heard shuffling inside. The door cracked open. Secured by a chain, a bloodshot eye peered out. "Go away," rasped a voice. "I told you I don't know nothing." "Mr. Jenkins," Mercer said calmly. "We just want to talk. It's about Sophie Harrington." The eye widened, darting between them. "I don't know no Sophie." Michael stepped forward. "I'm her father. Please. She was missing for 15 years because of what you did." A hacking cough came from behind the door. "You got the wrong guy. We know about the flight from Houston to Denver 15 years ago." Mercer pressed. "We know about your connection to Vanessa Harrington. We know about the payments to Hope Haven." The door closed. For a moment, they thought he'd shut them out for good. Then they heard the chain sliding free, and the door reopened. Carl Jenkins was a wreck of a man, emaciated, jaundiced, trembling slightly with what looked like early Parkinson's. He wore a stained undershirt and sweatpants, his thinning hair unwashed. "Come in," he muttered, "before someone sees." The apartment matched its occupant, neglected, reeking of stale cigarettes and cheap whiskey. Fast food containers littered every surface. "Make it quick," Jenkins said, lowering himself into a threadbare recliner. "My flight's in a few hours." "Running away again?" Michael asked, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. Jenkins' laugh dissolved into a coughing fit. "Wouldn't you? If she found out I was talking to you..." "Vanessa," Sophie said. It wasn't a question. Jenkins studied her face. "Jesus, you grew up. Last time I saw you, you were this terrified little kid." Remorse flickered across his ravaged features. "Never meant for it to go like that." "Tell us what happened," Mercer said, recording the conversation on his phone. From the beginning. Jenkins took a swig from a whiskey bottle beside his chair. "I was doing landscaping work for Mrs. Harrington's estate in Houston. Good money. Then one day, she calls me into her office. Says she knows about my record but has a job that could set me up for life." "What kind of job?" Michael asked. $50,000 to take the girl, her niece, and make her disappear. No hurting her. She was clear about that. Just make her vanish. Make it look like a stranger abduction. Sophie felt lightheaded. Why did she want me gone?" Jenkins shrugged. "Money, I guess," she said. "With you out of the picture, she'd eventually control everything. Said your dad was too soft, too distracted by family to properly manage the Harrington fortune. And you agreed to kidnap a child." Michael's voice shook. "I needed the money, gambling debts, bad people wanting to break my legs." Jenkins looked away. It was supposed to be simple. Grab the girl, drive to the private airfield, fly to Denver, leave her at the orphanage with another 50 grand to keep them quiet. "But," Mercer prompted, "but she was so scared, kept crying for her mom and dad." Jenkins's hands trembled around the bottle. "I couldn't. I was supposed to make it look like you'd died, leave some evidence, clothes or something to throw off the search. But I couldn't do it. So I just left you at Hope Haven, paid them to take you in. No questions asked." Sophie felt tears rolling down her cheeks. "I don't remember any of this." "You were in shock, doctor. At the orphanage said you'd blocked everything out, clean slate." Jenkins looked at her with rheumy eyes. "Maybe that was a mercy. So Vanessa arranged everything," Michael said, his face ashen. "My own sister orchestrated my daughter's kidnapping." Jenkins nodded. "She checked in every year, made sure I stayed quiet. Annual payments to keep me comfortable. Until 3 years ago. Then they stopped. Figured she thought the danger had passed. And now you're running again," Mercer observed. "Wouldn't you?" Jenkins repeated. "She finds out I talked to you. I'm a dead man. We can protect you," Mercer said. "In exchange for your full testimony?" Jenkins laughed bitterly. "No one can protect me from Vanessa Harrington. Lady's got ice in her veins." The flight back to Los Angeles was silent. Michael stared out the window, his face a mask of grief and betrayal. Sophie sat across from him, watching emotions war across her father's features. Disbelief, rage, devastation. "I can't believe she did this," Michael finally said, his voice barely audible over the jet engines. "My own sister." Jenkins's confession had been comprehensive and damning. After their confrontation, he had agreed, reluctantly, to provide a formal statement and remain in protective custody arranged by Mercer until they could build a case against Vanessa. She must have been planning it for months, Sophie said gently. The private plane, the orphanage arrangement, the money, none of that was spontaneous. Michael nodded, his eyes haunted. All those years she stood by my side while I searched for you, attended memorial services, consoled me when leads went cold, watched me grieve your mother. His voice broke. How could she look me in the eye? People can compartmentalize, Mercer interjected from his seat across the aisle. Convince themselves their actions are justified. Nothing justifies stealing a child, Michael said sharply. Of course not, Mercer agreed. But in Vanessa's mind, she probably rationalized it, told herself you'd eventually recover, that the business would thrive under her guidance, that everyone would be better off in the long run. Except me, Sophie said quietly. And my mother, Michael's head snapped up. Catherine, God, if she'd known what Vanessa did, that Sophie was alive all those years. She might still be alive. Sophie finished the thought. The realization hung heavy in the cabin. Vanessa's actions had effectively killed Catherine Harrington as surely as if she'd used a weapon. We need to be strategic, Mercer cautioned as the jet began its descent into Los Angeles. Vanessa is intelligent and connected. If she suspects we're onto her, she might flee or destroy evidence. What kind of evidence are we looking for? Sophie asked. Financial records, for starters. Those payments to Jenkins and the orphanage would have left a trail, no matter how careful she was. Communications, emails, phone records, and we need to solidify Jenkins' testimony. Find corroborating witnesses, flight records, anything that puts him with Vanessa before the kidnapping. I'll have our legal team pull all of Vanessa's financial records from the company, Michael said, determination hardening his voice. She's had access to certain Harrington accounts for years. If she used any company resources, that would give us leverage, Mercer agreed. In the meantime, you both need to act normally around her. Don't give her any reason to suspect we've spoken to Jenkins. Michael's jaw tightened. I don't know if I can look at her without wanting to. You have to, Mercer interrupted firmly. For Sophie's sake, for justice to be properly served. By the time they landed, Michael had composed himself enough to present a neutral facade. They parted ways with Mercer, who was heading directly to his office to begin building the case. What if she's home? Sophie asked as they drove toward the mansion. How do we act like nothing's changed? We compartmentalize, Michael said grimly, just like she did for 15 years. The house was quiet when they arrived. Vanessa's Mercedes was missing from the garage. She must still be at her meetings, Michael noted with visible relief. They gathered in his study, where Michael immediately began accessing financial records on his computer. Years of business acumen focused now on uncovering his sister's betrayal. Here, he said after an hour of searching. Transfers from Vanessa's personal account to an offshore entity called Phoenix Holdings. $50,000 15 years ago, exactly 1 week after your disappearance. The initial payment to Jenkins, Sophie guessed, and 3 more identical payments in subsequent years. Michael's face was grim. Then more sporadic amounts. $5,000 here, $10,000 there. Maintenance payments to keep him quiet. Can we trace the offshore account? Not directly, but... Michael paused, a new thought occurring to him. Wait, the company jet? If Vanessa used it to arrange Jenkins' transport to Denver, his fingers flew over the keyboard. Accessing a different database. Flight logs. All Harrington Company aircraft are meticulously tracked for tax and maintenance purposes. Minutes later, he sat back in his chair. There, 2 days after your disappearance, the smallest company jet made an unscheduled trip from a private airfield outside Houston to Denver. Pilot's log lists 1 passenger, Carl Jenkins, and notes the flight was authorized by Vanessa Harrington for confidential business purposes. She used company resources for the kidnapping, Sophie whispered. She was that confident. Arrogant, Michael corrected, his voice hard. She never thought she'd be caught. The sound of the garage door opening made them both freeze. She's home, Sophie said. Michael quickly closed the financial records on his screen. Remember, act normal. We need more time to build the case. They moved to the living room. Michael grabbing a random book from the shelf to appear casual. Sophie picked up her phone, pretending to scroll through social media. Vanessa swept in moments later, designer shopping bags in hand. "Productive day," she announced, setting her purchases down. "I've been thinking, Sophie, you need a proper wardrobe if you're going to be a Harrington. Those clothes you brought from Austin aren't quite up to standard." Sophie bristled, but forced a smile. "That's thoughtful of you, Aunt Vanessa." "Where were you two all day?" Vanessa asked, her tone light, but her eyes sharp. "Maria said you left in quite a hurry," showing Sophie the company headquarters downtown. Michael lied smoothly. "Thought it was time she saw the family business up close." "How industrious," Vanessa remarked. "Starting her at the top, then." "Actually, I'd like to learn from the ground up," Sophie said, meeting her aunt's gaze steadily. "Understand all aspects of what my father built." "What your grandfather built," Vanessa corrected, "and what Michael and I expanded together after he died." "Of course," Sophie conceded. "I have a lot to learn about the family history." "Indeed you do." Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Well, I'll freshen up before dinner. Maria's making that roast you like, Michael." After she disappeared upstairs, Michael exhaled slowly. "This is harder than I expected." "You did well," Sophie assured him. "We just need to keep it up until Mercer has everything he needs." Over the next 2 days, they maintained the charade. Michael went to the office. Sophie explored Los Angeles with a security detail, ostensibly for her protection as the newly returned Harrington heiress, but really to ensure her safety from Vanessa. And Vanessa continued her subtle campaign of undermining Sophie's position. On the third morning, Mercer called with news. "We've got it," he said without preamble. "Financial records, flight logs, Jenkins's sworn testimony, and a bonus. The orphanage director from 15 years ago has confirmed receiving cash payments to keep Sophie's arrival quiet." "Is it enough?" Michael asked. "More than enough for criminal charges," Mercer confirmed. "Kidnapping, fraud, embezzlement of company resources, possibly even accessory to manslaughter regarding Catherine's death." Michael's face hardened. "How do we proceed?" "Carefully," Mercer advised. "I've coordinated with the district attorney's office. They're preparing arrest warrants, but we need to ensure Vanessa doesn't flee before they're executed." "When?" Sophie asked. "Tomorrow morning. In the meantime, continue as normal. Don't give her any reason to suspect." That evening, dinner was excruciating. Vanessa was in high spirits, discussing plans for a proper welcome party to introduce Sophie to Los Angeles society. "Nothing too overwhelming," she said, sipping her wine. "Just 100 or so of our closest friends and business associates." "That sounds extensive," Sophie managed. "You're a Harrington now, darling. Time to step into the role." Vanessa's smile was predatory. "Unless, of course, you're having second thoughts about claiming your inheritance." "Sophie isn't claiming anything," Michael said sharply. "She is my daughter, confirmed by science and law." "Of course, brother dear. I'm simply concerned about her adjustment." Vanessa turned to Sophie with false sympathy. "It must be so difficult, transitioning from such humble beginnings to all this responsibility." Sophie met her gaze evenly. "Some responsibilities are heavier than others, Aunt Vanessa. Like the weight of secrets kept for 15 years. A flicker of something, alarm, crossed Vanessa's face before her mask of composure returned. Indeed, we all have our burdens to bear. Later that night, as Sophie prepared for bed, she heard Vanessa's door open and close, followed by footsteps down the hall. Unable to resist, she cracked her door open in time to see her aunt disappearing into Michael's study. Sophie waited 5 minutes, then silently followed. The study door was ajar, and through the crack, she could see Vanessa at Michael's computer, frantically typing, pulling out her phone. Sophie recorded video of her aunt accessing files, evidence of her desperate final attempts to cover her tracks. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of the Harrington mansion, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Sophie stood at her bedroom window, watching as unmarked police cars quietly took positions at the perimeter of the estate. David Mercer had called at dawn to confirm everything was in place. Now they just needed to ensure Vanessa didn't flee before the officers arrived with the arrest warrant. A soft knock at her door made Sophie turn. Michael stood in the doorway, his face drawn with the weight of what was to come. "Breakfast is ready," he said simply. "Vanessa's already downstairs." Sophie nodded. smoothing the front of her blouse with trembling hands. "How are you holding up?" "I've been better," Michael admitted. 15 years of searching for my daughter only to discover my sister was behind her disappearance. It's not something they prepare you for in business school. The attempt at humor fell flat, but Sophie appreciated the effort. "It'll be over soon," she said, touching his arm gently. "Then we can start healing. Together." Downstairs, Vanessa sat at the dining table. Immaculately dressed in a tailored navy suit, scrolling through her phone while sipping coffee, she looked up as they entered, her smile practiced and cold. "There you two are," she said brightly. "I was beginning to think you were avoiding me." "Just a slow start," Michael replied, pouring himself coffee with a deliberately steady hand. "I thought we might discuss the press release today," Vanessa continued. "About Sophie's return. It's been nearly 2 weeks, and people are starting to ask questions. We need to control the narrative." "What did you have in mind?" Sophie asked. Sophie, forcing herself to maintain eye contact with the woman who had stolen 15 years of her life. Something tasteful, a miracle reunion, DNA confirmation, the Harrington heiress returns, that sort of thing. Vanessa sipped her coffee. "We should schedule a professional photo shoot. Of course, something to replace those ghastly waitress clothes in your closet." Sophie bit back a retort. "Just a little longer." "Actually," Michael interjected, "I've invited some colleagues over this morning to meet Sophie. They should be arriving shortly." Vanessa's eyebrows rose. "Oh, who?" "James Whitfield, Richard from legal, a few board members. I thought it was time to formally introduce Sophie to the company leadership." "How enterprising of you," Vanessa said, a slight edge to her voice. "Though it might have been considerate to inform me, I would have prepared something more substantial than yogurt and fruit." "It's not that kind of meeting," Michael replied evenly. Vanessa studied her brother's face, suspicion dawning in her eyes. "What kind of meeting is it then?" The doorbell rang, the sound slicing through the tension. "That would be them now," Michael said, setting down his coffee cup. Maria appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Harrington, Mr. Mercer, and several others are here to see you." "Show them in, please, Maria." Vanessa's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. "David Mercer, the investigator." "What's this about, Michael?" Before he could answer, Mercer entered, accompanied by 2 plainclothes detectives. Behind them came James Whitfield and the company's chief legal counsel, Ms. Harrington. Mercer nodded to Vanessa, his expression professionally neutral. Vanessa stood, smoothing her skirt. "What's going on here, Michael?" "Please, everyone. Let's move to the living room," Michael said, his voice eerily calm. "We have matters to discuss." In the spacious living room, with its panoramic views of the Los Angeles skyline, they arranged themselves in a loose semicircle. Vanessa took a seat on the sofa, crossing her legs, her face a mask of composure, despite the growing tension. "I'll ask again," she said coolly. "What is this about?" Michael remained standing, hands clasped behind his back. "It's about Sophie, Vanessa, about what happened 15 years ago." Vanessa's gaze darted between the faces watching her. "What are you implying?" "We know everything," Michael said simply. "About Carl Jenkins, about the flight to Denver, about the payments to keep Sophie hidden and forgotten at Hope Haven home." The color drained from Vanessa's face, but her composure held. "I don't know what you're talking about." "We have Jenkins in protective custody," Mercer interjected. "He's provided a full confession, detailing how you hired him to kidnap Sophie and make her disappear. We have the financial records of your payments to him and to the orphanage. We have the flight logs from the company jet you authorized for his use." Vanessa's laugh was brittle. "This is absurd. You can't possibly believe I would kidnap my own niece." "The evidence is overwhelming, Vanessa," Michael said, his voice tight with controlled rage. "Bank transfers from your accounts to Jenkins and to an anonymous fund that made donations to Hope Haven. Company resources used to transport Jenkins and Sophie to Denver. Your own handwritten notes monitoring the investigation to ensure it never led back to you. Those payments could have been for anything," Vanessa insisted. "And any notes I kept were to help find Sophie. Not hide her. We have your signature on the flight authorization," James Whitfield spoke up, his tone sorrowful. "Marked confidential business, 2 days after Sophie disappeared." Vanessa's eyes darted to the detectives, calculation replacing panic. This is a family misunderstanding. Whatever evidence you think you have is circumstantial at best. Jenkins's testimony isn't circumstantial, Mercer countered. Neither are the wire transfers directly linking to his bank account, nor the orphanage director's confirmation that she was paid to keep Sophie's arrival quiet. Even if this Jenkins person says I hired him, it's his word against mine, Vanessa said, straightening her spine. A convicted criminal against a respected businesswoman. Who do you think a jury would believe? They'd believe the evidence. One of the detectives finally spoke. Miss Harrington, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of kidnapping, conspiracy, fraud, and embezzlement of company resources. For the first time, genuine fear flashed across Vanessa's face. This is insane, Michael. You can't seriously be doing this. I'm your sister. And Sophie is my daughter, Michael replied, his voice breaking slightly. My daughter who you stole, whose childhood you erased, whose mother died of grief because of what you did. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, her mask finally slipping to reveal the cold calculation beneath. Catherine was never good enough for you. A pianist playing at being a corporate wife. Please, she would have ruined everything father built, and Sophie, she gestured dismissively, was becoming her carbon copy, soft, impractical, a distraction from what matters. Sophie stepped forward, trembling with rage and hurt. What matters? What could possibly matter more than family? Legacy, Vanessa spat. The Harrington name. The empire. Michael was squandering his potential, playing daddy instead of expanding the business after Catherine died. We tripled our market value in 5 years. That wouldn't have happened if he'd been distracted by tea parties and piano recitals. The naked truth of Vanessa's twisted priorities hung in the air. Michael stared at his sister as if seeing her for the first time. You let me believe my daughter was dead, he said softly. You watched me grieve for 15 years. I made you stronger, Vanessa insisted. Look what we accomplished together after you focused on what mattered. Sophie moved to stand directly before her aunt. Why didn't you just have me killed? She asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. It would have been cleaner. Something flickered in Vanessa's eyes. Not remorse exactly, but a limit even she wouldn't cross. I'm not a monster. Aren't you? Sophie pressed. You stole my childhood. You killed my mother with grief. You let my father suffer for years, all for money and power. For the Harrington legacy, Vanessa corrected, defiant even now. Something bigger than any individual. Ms. Harrington, the detective interrupted, stepping forward with handcuffs. Please stand. Vanessa's composure finally cracked. Michael, stop this. We're family. Whatever mistakes I made, we can work through them privately. The time for that passed 15 years ago, Michael said, his voice hollow. When you decided Sophie's life was worth sacrificing for your ambition. As the detectives began reading Vanessa her rights, Sophie felt a strange emptiness where rage should have been. This woman, her blood relative, had calculated and executed the destruction of her childhood with cold precision. For money, for power, for legacy. I have one question, Sophie said, cutting through the formal legal recitation. Did you ever regret it, even once, in 15 years? Vanessa stared at her, defiance warring with defeat in her eyes. Finally, she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. No, I did what was necessary, and I would do it again. As the detectives led Vanessa away, Sophie turned to Michael, tears streaming down her face. Justice had been served, but the wounds left by Vanessa's betrayal would take far longer to heal than the 15 years they had already lost. 1 year later, the courtroom fell silent as the judge delivered his sentence. Vanessa Harrington, impeccably dressed even in her moment of downfall, stood rigid and expressionless. For the crimes of kidnapping, criminal conspiracy, embezzlement, and fraud, this court sentences you to 25 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. 1 year for each year of childhood stolen from the victim. The symmetry wasn't lost on Sophie, who sat beside Michael in the front row. 15 years taken. 15 years to be served. It felt like poetic justice, though no sentence could truly restore what had been lost. As Vanessa was led away, she turned once, her eyes meeting Sophie's. No remorse shadowed her features, only a cold resignation. Sophie held her gaze until the courtroom doors closed behind her aunt. "It's over," Michael said, squeezing Sophie's hand. Finally over. But was it? Sophie wondered. The trial had dominated headlines for months. The Harrington betrayal, the papers called it. Heiress returns from the dead. Sister's jealousy leads to kidnapping plot. Their private tragedy had become public spectacle, dissected on morning shows and tabloids. Outside the courthouse, they pushed through a crowd of reporters, ignoring shouted questions as they made their way to the waiting car. "How do you feel about the verdict? Will you be visiting Vanessa in prison? Sophie, do you forgive your aunt?" That last question lingered as they drove away. Did she? Could she ever? The months following Vanessa's arrest had been a whirlwind of legal proceedings, therapy sessions, and gradual reintegration into the life Sophie Harrington should have had. Memory fragments continued to surface. A birthday party by the pool, her mother teaching her to bake cookies, riding her bike around the circular driveway. But they remained disjointed pieces of a puzzle she might never fully complete. Sophie had enrolled in business courses at UCLA, determined to understand the empire that had been valuable enough to steal her childhood. Michael had been supportive but cautious. "The business will always be there," he told her. "Take time to find yourself first." But who was she? Not fully Isabel Carter anymore, but not entirely Sophie Harrington either. She existed in the space between identities, between lives. As they pulled into the estate driveway, Sophie noted the changes they'd made over the past year. The gardens had been completely redesigned. No trace of Vanessa's preferred formal hedges and geometric patterns. Catherine's grand piano, which had been relegated to storage after her death, now occupied pride of place in the living room. Photos of Sophie's lost years as Isabel had been integrated into the family gallery, honoring both parts of her journey. "Ready for tonight?" Michael asked as they entered the house. Sophie nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." They had planned a small gathering to mark the 1-year anniversary of her return and the conclusion of Vanessa's trial. Not a celebration, exactly, but an acknowledgement of closure and new beginnings. Hours later, as twilight settled over Los Angeles, the Harrington home filled with carefully selected guests: James Whitfield and his wife, David Mercer, Sophie's therapist Dr. Levine, and a few others who had supported them through the ordeal. Notably absent were the society figures Vanessa had once cultivated, the superficial connections that had always prioritized the Harrington name over the actual people behind it. "I'd like to propose a toast," Michael said, raising his glass once everyone had gathered in the living room. "To new beginnings, to healing, and most importantly, to finding what was lost." Glasses clinked gently. Sophie sipped her champagne, studying the faces around her. These people who had become her support system, her new foundation. After dinner, she found herself at the white piano, fingers hovering over the keys. The music came more easily now. Muscle memory awakened through months of practice. She played the piece her mother had taught her, for Elise, and then transitioned into something new. A composition she had been working on that blended classical structure with contemporary elements. Like her, it existed between worlds, honoring the past while creating something uniquely its own. When she finished, the small audience applauded warmly. Dr. Levine approached, smiling. "Beautiful," she said. "You've been practicing." "It helps," Sophie admitted. "Playing connects me to her, to my mother. Sometimes I feel her guiding my fingers." "Have you decided about tomorrow?" Dr. Levine asked quietly. Sophie nodded. "I'm going. I need to." The next morning, Sophie drove alone to the California Institution for Women. The visit had been arranged weeks ago, though she'd told no one but her therapist and Michael. Some journeys needed to be walked alone. The prison processing was dehumanizing. Eye checks, metal detectors, pat-downs. Finally, Sophie was led to a sterile visitation room with small tables bolted to the floor. Vanessa entered in a beige jumpsuit, her hair pulled back severely, her makeup minimal but precise. Even here, she maintained what control she could over her appearance. She showed no surprise at seeing Sophie, taking her seat with the same poise she might have displayed at a board meeting. "I didn't expect you to visit," Vanessa said, her voice as cool and modulated as ever. "Neither did I," Sophie admitted. "But here we are." "Indeed, to what do I owe the pleasure?" come to gloat. Sophie shook her head. I'm not here for you, Vanessa. I'm here for me. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. Closure. How trite. Not closure, freedom. Sophie leaned forward slightly. I've spent a year trying to understand why you did what you did, trying to comprehend how your mind works, what drove you to such extremes. And, have you unraveled the mystery of my psyche? Vanessa's tone was mocking, but something vulnerable flickered behind her eyes. No, and I never will. Sophie's voice remained steady. That's why I'm here, to tell you that I'm done trying to understand you. Done giving you space in my head. Vanessa's mask slipped momentarily, revealing genuine surprise. I forgive you, Sophie continued, the words feeling strange but necessary on her tongue. Not because you deserve forgiveness. You don't. But because I deserve peace. How magnanimous, Vanessa said. Vanessa, but her usual sharpness had dulled. It's not magnanimity, it's self-preservation. Sophie stood. I won't be coming back, Vanessa. This is goodbye. For the first time, uncertainty crossed Vanessa's features. Why tell me at all? Why not just forget me? Because I needed you to know that you failed. Sophie replied simply. You tried to erase me, but here I am. You tried to destroy our family, but you only made us stronger. Everything you did to hurt us has ultimately healed us. Vanessa had no response, her carefully constructed facade finally cracking to reveal the emptiness beneath. Sophie turned and walked away without looking back. When she returned to the mansion that evening, Michael was waiting in the garden. He didn't ask where she'd been, respecting her privacy while offering silent support. I've been thinking, Sophie said as they walked among the rose bushes Catherine had planted decades ago, about that money you used to leave out to test people's honesty. Michael winced slightly at the reminder of his past cynicism. Not my finest chapter. Actually, I had an idea. Sophie pulled out a notebook where she'd been sketching plans. What if we created a scholarship fund for honest young people in difficult circumstances? We could call it the Honesty Test Scholarship. Michael took the notebook, studying her notes with growing interest, converting a tool of cynicism into something hopeful. I like it. We'd need to develop a way to identify recipients. Maybe partner with community organizations, schools in underprivileged areas. We could make it part of the Harrington Foundation, Michael suggested. A new division focused on supporting ethical young people who demonstrate integrity despite challenging circumstances. Sophie smiled. Exactly. Turn what Vanessa did into something positive, something that honors Mom's memory and helps others. As the California sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, father and daughter sat on a garden bench refining their idea. The white piano was visible through the window, waiting for Sophie's return. On her finger, the small silver ring with SH engraved inside caught the fading light. No longer a mystery, but a symbol of identity reclaimed. You know, Michael said softly, your mother would be incredibly proud of the woman you've become. Sophie leaned her head on her father's shoulder, feeling for the first time that she truly belonged, not just to this place or this name, but to herself.